We're talking about kids' lives. We're talking about generational poverty being basically constructed because of the public schooling system that we put on autopilot in this country for 100 plus years.
Hi, Mark.
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Mark.
Hey, Mark Howley.
The Mark Howley Show.
How did you do it and why? Welcome back to the Mark Howley Show. And today we got Tommy Schultz, the American Federation for Children's CEO. It's our second time around with Tommy. And I'm excited to hear what he has to say because he's had some awesome victories this year. And I just thought I'd take a statement from you and then we can carry on. The future of American education is here. The first national school choice law is a hard-won victory and a moment of immense opportunity. School choice works, and so must its greatest ever opportunity to go national. Now, that must have pumped you up.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. I mean, I'd love to just hear what does it mean to our children, and then what did it mean to you and your organization?
Well, first of all, Mark, thanks for having me back. Hopefully the sequel is like The Godfather, where number 2 is better than the first one. Look, the law you're describing, the law that you were quoting me about, it's probably a 30-year long fight in essence, but we were really pushing at this law for nearly 10 years, basically to give school choice opportunities and offerings in all 50 states. Because right now, our current business model and the way that state constitutions and funding for K through 12 education works, it's mostly a state level proposition. And some of these states, the political realities of the teachers unions and some of these well-funded interests in the K through 12 schooling apparatus just would not allow for any type of reform. Places like California or Oregon, you name it. And at the end of the day, we knew, gosh, if we could create something that we're seeing be so successful in 32 other states across the country, if we could bring that to other states by giving families real K through 12 education options, not just the ones that are assigned by their zip code, right? If we can do that in every state, this would utterly transform American education. It would utterly transform a system that we put on autopilot basically for 150 years since the late 1800s. And so what we did was we passed a tax credit for donations to scholarship organizations. So coming online next year, January 1, 2027, everybody listening to your show can now donate $1,700 to a 501c3 scholarship organization, and they can get a dollar for dollar reduction in their taxes. So what's so exciting about that is that could mean billions and billions of dollars of privately funded contributions can come off of the sidelines into K through 12. It's going to utterly transform kids' lives. A few $1,000s in most cases can really get that kid. It's huge. It can get a kid into a school because the schools do their own fundraising. The parents maybe chip in a few dollars here and there in some states, or you couple that with the 32 states where we've already passed robust state funding for school choice. So Texas, we just passed a huge law here in Texas last year that for the parents that are eligible, they're basically going to get $10,000 per kid per year funded by the state to go to the private school of their choice. Or if your kid has special needs, up to $30,000 a kid.
So let me ask this.
Yeah.
What are the benefits to the parent in Texas? I know we're talking nationally, but in Texas alone, what are the benefits to a parent in Texas for the school choice program?
If you're a parent, especially a lower income parent, who is stuck in a really bad public school that's been bad for maybe decades, and you want to go to that great Catholic school or a private school down the road, or the new private school that just got started that's trying to help kids in your community, now with the Texas funding, that $10,474 per kid per year, that gets you into practically every single private school that you may want to go to. Then this federal law, when this comes online next year, couple that with potentially private scholarship funds saying, hey, maybe that one school you wanted to go to the cost was about $12,000, which is about the market average right now. We are giving you a supplemental $2,000 scholarship fueled by the federal tax credits. This is where we have now engineered really a revolution in our K through 12 system where you can finally have innovation. You can finally have great entrepreneurs come off the sideline, or the great teachers. We talked about this last time. The great teachers that, on average, a public school teacher is out of the classroom in 3 years. There's the human capital on the sidelines that we could recruit to either build new schools or build hyper-local micro schools in every community with high quality education, all funded by these kind of policies that we passed. That's what's so exciting. That's why I said the future is here, and this next decade is going to be so exciting in K through 12 in a way that it just hasn't been for so long.
You talked about this before, but what is the zip code public school trap? I think that's a great I think that's just an awesome thing to talk about. So what is it? What's the zip code trap?
Sure. Well, a lot of folks know about it when they're thinking about if like they just have kids or they're becoming of schooling age. They're thinking about, well, I need to go to the right zoned public school. I heard that one's good. We need to move. When you really unpack that, though, a system that just has arbitrary red lines telling you where you can and cannot go, and they'll say it's public, right? Like it's like, well, if you're the town over and you want to just go to school at the better school district, like you can't just go there. You have to, prove residency and all this.
Yeah,
What it necessarily does, it creates a two-tiered have and have not system, right? The wealthier communities or the ones that are just zoned around the old school segregationist lines, right? From the Jim Crow era. That's a lot of what this is still just a vestige of. You just create this kind of inequity across our entire K through 12 system. Whereas what we're doing with our policies is saying, no, fund the student regardless of where they live. Let them control the funding versus the school districts with these arbitrary lines that control the funding. When the parents are fully in charge, right, they're going to make the best decision for their kid. New options are going to proliferate because they're not operating under this old antiquated system. And even if you look state by state, how crazy it is, Florida has 67 counties. They operate by a county school system. So there's 67, school districts essentially. Texas has, a couple hundred counties and 1,300, nearly 1,300 school districts. All of these arbitrary crisscrossing red lines. It looks like congressional gerrymandering, right? And at the end of the day, that's just hurting kids, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was raised in suburban Philly. I mean,
there you go.
Just no question, where not to go. This was not a, discrimination, whatever you want to call it. There was no question. You did not want to go to West Philly High, unless, if you're looking for a good education. And so let me ask you this, at some point in this battle, you're trying to win over Republicans and, I know you probably have to soft walk that, but it's somewhere a point or another in this battle, you just said, for lack of a better term, fuck it. I'm going after the whole schmagegi. Well, I mean, when was that? Because I think last time we talked, you were a little bit more gingerly stepping around. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I would urge
would it be, if I'm correct, when would it be that you just said pull the plug and we're going in full force for this federal thing?
Look, I would urge folks to read an op-ed that I had published in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago talking about Texas, for instance, where 2 years after we really engaged in a really significant way on the elections front, going after these Republicans that were really bad on school choice, this upcoming year, when the legislature reconvenes in 2027, there will no longer be a hostile school choice vote in the Republican caucus in Texas.
Cool.
We wiped them all out, or they retired, or there were two that flipped their vote because they said, it's going to be political suicide if we go against this, right?
Get the link to that.
Yeah, and it really, what we were saying is we tackled the final myth that they said, everyone has said for 30 years that rural voters don't want school choice, right? And we said this is not true because we've seen in Florida, Oklahoma, Ohio, this is booming in support in rural communities. Their rural school systems are still thriving. Private schools are getting built there. So for anybody to say Texas is impossible because it's too rural was just crazy, because as soon as we took the message to the voters that your representative wants to block school choice, that person, many of these representatives got beat by 20 points. I mean, just a real signature issue in the campaign cycle the last 2 years. And we really felt, and we strongly feel that, look, this isn't just, we're not talking about marginal tax rates here, Mark. We're talking about kids' lives. We're talking about generational poverty being basically constructed because of the public schooling system that we put on autopilot in this country for 100 plus years. When you really just have that zip code defined destiny, as you were just referencing earlier, where the last 5 digits of your address suddenly might tell you, oh, hey, your kid is going to go to failing elementary school, failing middle school, failing high school. I mean, what a tragedy for the greatest country in the world, right? And so these policies, and when we bring that real kind of urgency to both the voters at the ballot box, to the legislatures when they're convening at the Capitol, boy, it's a winning issue. And boy, it's a really salient one, because you've seen so many governors now, how many of them never mentioned school choice 10 years ago? And now every state of the union that they give in their states, they're talking about school choice. They're talking about the zip codes. And so it's a really exciting moment here in time.
It is I know just a little bit from your background, you were not raised in the horrors of an inner city, I don't think, if I remember correctly.
I grew up on a farm, so no.
Okay, yeah. So now you find at some point in your life you click in and you go, hey, maybe this is all wrong. Like, when was it in your life that just sort of the bell went off, or you went boom, oh my gosh, this is a huge personal issue?
Yeah, it came after I graduated from Stanford, was working in politics and public affairs. A role with AFC where I currently sit as the CEO came up. I said, hey, I like the issue of school choice. I read Milton Friedman's essay about school vouchers and in college or high school. I watched the movie Waiting for Superman, the documentary that came out in 2010 that was really peeling back the layers of some of these issues, the teachers unions, et cetera. And so when we started, doing work in Tennessee and we started visiting these amazing schools, these little private schools that were just helping these kids in the deepest levels of poverty, but that school was about to close because they obviously don't have a financial business model that can work. They were entirely relying on the generosity of donors to keep these wonderful little schools alive. And they were telling us, the administration and the teachers, that we have all these kids, some of them are homeless and deepest poverty. If you guys don't pass that school choice law next year, this school is going to close. We just don't have the financial means to keep this alive. It really just struck me that I'm looking at all these cute and beautiful kids going, if we aren't successful, all of them are probably going to go to the worst schools in America next year. And Absolutely. Lord knows what's going to happen to them in 15 or 20 years down the road. It just haunted me because, again, we're the most sophisticated, wealthiest, powerful country in the world. And yet we've engineered this K through 12 system to just kill our children and their mental fortitude and their ability to have a successful life. It's just a tragedy. And to me, it just didn't sit well as a patriotic, red-blooded American to say, we can't accept this. Why don't we change this? And there are a few just small tweaks we need to change at the state level and at the federal level to engineer this. And lo and behold, we've done it.
Well, if you look at, as somebody who's retired and sold and made some money, I watch the kids who I'm training now in selling and overall. I do quality control work also. I help train in those two fields. Look, the Asians and the Indians are going to win. Nobody wants to hear that. I know that's not, whatever you want to call it, but I work with them. I work with a lot of American kids, and it bums me out because I feel like you left the door open. It's your playground. The culture, the lay of the land. That's one of the hugest advantages you have. You have the, inherent American sense of, or traditionally, I can go forward. And I think they're really missing out. And it's a shame. We have a generation of kids who they don't know the fundamentals and a work ethic. I'll leave that to another argument. What I find mostly with the kids that I'm working from who are in, Asian and Indian communities they work harder and they have a better education. And
well, the K through 12 system, the K through 12 system is very much engineered so many of these inequalities that we're seeing, right? So when you have these high poverty areas that were redlined during the segregation era to where you just have this, you probably saw some of these recent reports that went across Fox and the Journal talking about basically you have almost these ghost schools where it's like there's 97 administrators and teachers and 6 students in the class. And again, these are usually in these high poverty areas that are fully controlled by the unions, and the money is flowing to the adults in the system, but not the students. Whereas you've seen if people are able to break out, even just that first generation out of that deep poverty, if they're able to get into that better school, it's going to transform communities 10 and 20 years later. And I think some of the dynamics within our schooling system, and especially for African-American students for so long, whether it's segregation policies or the public schooling dynamics, have really, plagued that community with a lack of educational upper mobility and opportunity. And this, what we're seeing in so many of these places, whether it's at Florida or Ohio, and even inklings of this in Pennsylvania, where we do have some school choice programs going on there, you're suddenly seeing that these people are able to break those chains of generational poverty, transform their communities. And I'm so excited, Mark, for this next 10 or 20 years to where I'm hearing the same thing from you about business leaders where they're like, gosh, the quality of our kids coming out of universities is terrible. Or even, I don't know if you saw that report that came out from University of California, San Diego, where, they had this remedial math class for a pretty prestigious university in California, where it's like something akin to like only 87% of the students in that class could actually get through the 8th grade level math assessment of basic stuff like 7 plus X equals, 3 plus Y. It's just unbelievably basic stuff that, gosh, those kids went through, all the way up till they were 18 years old. And then they're getting there and they can't even do fifth and sixth grade math. It's just, what are we doing in this country?
Here's one thing that is a fact. In my business, we didn't get high tech guys. We're looking for, we always joke around, we're looking for someone with a 2.5 to a 2.7 who is, a scrapper. You didn't go to the good school. You came in the bags. And that's what we're looking for. And you can find them. But what I learned from it is that if you ask to write a concise letter to a customer, 3 paragraphs, open, middle, close, it's a mess. Literally,
yeah.
Early in my career, I edited for fear that their letters would get out, which was, we were a smaller business at the time. Later, I learned in quality control that a lot of the marketing guys who came out, they didn't know what a mean and a standard deviation was.
Sure.
And it fascinated me. And I would show them the bell curve, and they would say, where did you learn
normal distribution?
And I would go, what do you mean? Where did I learn it? This is statistics. This is like early. And it hit me then. And it's when I started dealing with the kids, some of the kids coming in from outside of the country, that's all inherent. Even their writing skills are good, even though they're not from our culture. There'll be mistakes in it, but the clarity is there. And that frustrates me because, you're giving up people are climbing to get into this country to make a good living and make a good life. And it's a shame. Let's not let it get squandered, because it will get squandered.
And it's not it's not some modest endeavor. I mean, we're spending $1 trillion a year, state, federal, local, on our K through 12 system. I mean, as much as we're spending on our Department of Defense. And what if we said, only 30% of the bullets we use in our wars actually can even go off? I mean, that's kind of the statistical equivalent of what we're seeing in K through 12, where you maybe only have on average 30% of kids that are at their grade level benchmarks. Mark, those benchmarks have gone way down over the years. If you look at, it's a famous kind of meme that goes around from time to time online of like, look at the 8th grade, random rural Kentucky, high school entrance exam for 8th graders. And I mean, it's stuff that I'm pretty sure most college graduates wouldn't be able to do this in America today. We have weakened the standards. We have gone away from the core of what we used to do on education, even basic things like reading. I mean, we abandoned kind of basic science of reading, phonics instruction that, for the last 10 years, we're chasing these fads that people come up with out of these crank universities, in my opinion, and with these wild theories about here's how we really should educate kids. It's like, we've known how to educate children, to teach them virtues, et cetera, for 2,000 plus years. We abandoned that all of a sudden in the last 100 years. It's just a tragedy. So we're trying to get things back on track. And thankfully, we're having a lot of success at doing that.
Well, as someone who lives in Washington, as a Republican, I'm highly underrepresented. But if you were to come out here or maybe I'm not sure what the exact, I think Washington did okay in the last round. But if you were to go into a state that was objecting to you, number one, who would you consider to be most cantankerous politicians? And what, if we were to try and pause and say logically, even though we disagree with the logic, what would they be saying to counteract you, or to pros, a point counterpoint?
Sure.
Who isn't a knucklehead?
It's the same argument in every state that, this will defund our public schools. This will, if you put school choice in and let parents control the funding, our public schools will be crippled, right? We're going to have to lay off teachers, close schools, et cetera. And I love it when they bring that argument to the table, honestly, Mark, because it polls well for them when they kind of put that just at the front of, just somebody, and they're like, yeah, that sounds right. Because if you're letting someone move their kid out of that school and they're taking the funding, you're, depleting the funding. But when you actually address the premise of their argument, they're saying they know their product that they're selling you isn't very good, right? Because if you're saying we have to force kids to go there, if we don't, they're going to leave in droves, and it's going to be devastating. So, and this goes to the idea too, when you peel back the onion of, okay, how many administrators do you have in your system? I mean, you'll look at some of these cities and it's like there's 600 administrators doing Lord knows what in many cases, or how well paid are all those deputy superintendents of X, Y, or Z, just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. The school boards, how there's millions and millions of dollars flowing into these random April elections funded by the unions. It is a huge cash machine. And for them, it's all about money, power, control. It's never about, again, going back to the premise of their question, why isn't it just about what's best for the student? Why isn't it about what is best for their journey, not about it's all about the money and keeping the money in this system? Well, the money isn't yours. It's the families, right? It's about their kid and their future. And so the policies that we're putting in place, we're saying we're agnostic to where the parent wants to go. We want them to choose the best, either public, charter, or private school for their kid, homeschool even. And at the end of the day, that's what this should be about. So when a politician comes and saying, arguing dollars and cents, and I also then just say, they usually never know this, and it's funny when you catch them off guard, but we'll ask them like, okay, what school district are you overseeing? And they'll mention, it's like, what's the proficiency rates of the kids in your school? And they're like, well, I know they could be better, but it's probably 70%. And it's usually like, no, it's like 25% or 30%. And it's like the mismatch, like they don't even care to look under the hood. They know they've got the union boss with all the cash that's funding their election sitting behind them, whispering them the talking points. And this is why we've been so successful in the elections, right? Because parents get this, voters get this. And now we've sort of the asymmetric, power, grab and the power hold that the unions have had on the system is no longer true because we're empowering parents. We're giving them funding. They're the new special interest group here in America.
So how do you, what state or states would you consider the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge, well, I'd say structurally,
if we could just go out and turn them all in to turn to your idea, what would be the first one you'd go after?
Well,
the first two.
Well, an interesting sort of white whale might be California because it has some similar school district dynamics to Texas, where I forget how many counties that California has, but I mean, there's something like 1,400 school districts in California, completely arbitrary, gerrymandered stuff. California it's like probably ranked 48th out of the states in terms of education, hundreds of billions of dollars going into the system, a lot of very, multimillionaire type of, people running these school districts and unions, right? And yet the kids are just doing horribly in so many of these places. And so California I'll give you a real interesting example when it comes to this federal policy. One quirk of the federal law we passed that, again, a donor can give $1,700 to a nonprofit that gives out scholarships to kids. They can get a tax credit for that donation. One quirk of the law that was part of the negotiation to get this into the big, beautiful bill last year was that the states had to opt in. So the governor of California, for instance, will have to say, I'm going to opt in, meaning scholarship funds in our state could, local charities that are out there, they can raise money and get tax credits. If the governor doesn't opt in, the donors in California can still donate, but they have to send their money out of state. So what's really intriguing now, Mark, is that yeah, exactly. I'm seeing the face you make. What's going to be really intriguing, it's such a no-brainer for a governor to opt in because it's free money. It's coming from federal tax credits, so it's costing nothing in the state. It's private contributions. All that governor, if they don't opt in, what they're effectively signaling is, I don't want poor kids or anybody in my state to benefit from this. The donors, though, can still donate. And what we're going to try to do is raise lots of money in places like California or Washington and say, great, we're going to send tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to other states that have opted in, who care about the kids in their state. And we'd love to keep it in California. We'd love to keep it in Washington because we actually care deeply about those kids. But your governor is actually saying, no, I'm so beholden to the unions that I don't want potentially, millions and millions of dollars of private charitable contributions to stay in our state. That's this interesting new dynamic with this federal law that, boy, you're putting a lot of pressure now on some of the, especially these Democratic governors. And actually one Democratic governor has already opted in, Governor Paulus in Colorado. He said, this is such a no-brainer. It's a tax credit for federal income taxes. It'd be crazy not to opt into this. So
why
it's going to be an interesting dam that breaks once I feel like there's probably going to be 3 or 4 more that do opt in that, boy, you're going to be in a tough political position saying, no, I don't want, local charities in our state to raise money.
Let me try and play this to a more practical, see if my scenario works out. I'm here, I'm making money in Washington, and I say, I don't know whether it's money related, but let's say I'm not, and I'm going to give a donation to a school that has, or to you.
A scholarship fund, yeah.
A scholarship fund. And right now I could say, gee, I want to do it to Washington, but they say, no, you can't do it here. So I go, well, then I'm going to do it over in Idaho. And they go, oh, okay. So then that federal tax deduction I get, just that money goes to Idaho.
Well, the money that you're donating, yeah, it's going to have to go out of state unless Washington opts in, unless your governor says that, yeah, Washington is going to allow for money to stay here. And think about it. It's every one of the people that maybe you employed or everybody in your parish and school or church and synagogue can all donate. But if your governor doesn't opt in, you're going to have to send your money to a national scholarship fund or something out of state because your governor just has said, I don't want that money to stay in the state. But it's a federal income tax credit. Everybody usually has some sort of liability at the federal level. They're all going to be eligible to still donate. Your money's just going to have to eventually end up out of states. It's for me, it's going to be very fascinating to see how the politics of this plays out.
Yeah, that will be, and I think it sounds to me like at least you got the tide, the trade winds are moving your direction.
That's right,
as they say, And I would have loved. I sold in the commodity business. I sold bags. I would have loved to have a deal where these foreign companies that come in that are cheaper, I could just say they're not allowed.
Right. Don't they call those anti-dumping laws or whatever, right?
Whatever. I've spent my life battling people who are trying to be, better, cheaper, whatever. And boy, what a wonderful hand up if I could have that taken care of. So I read through your website, and I know we went through these before and these different programs. And my question is, we take a quick walk through them. But first off, they can be cumbersome, or maybe to somebody who isn't educated to quite understand them. And so I'm going to read them off, and then I want to have my question. I see here, voucher programs, education savings account programs, scholarship tax credit programs, individual tuition tax credits, public charter, magnet, and others. Now, I went through and read each one of those, and to me, they made sense. And I was like, okay. If somebody wants to know about those, I'll ask first question is, does your association offer assistance in figuring what those mean? Are you staffed to do that, or are you more pointing them to a place where they can? I guess you understand my question.
Great question. So we do tons of parent training, school trainings. We give the schools toolkits to help. When parents are usually going to the school first to see like, hey, there's this program. Am I eligible? The schools are a pretty big node in that equation for helping a family navigate. We have obviously materials on our website. We'll do these informational videos. We do allow, families just to navigate that. And unfortunately, sometimes because they are government programs, sometimes they can be clunky to navigate if you're going to a state website. But we really try to help families as much as possible. I mentioned that Texas enrollment period where 274,000 students, applied. We spent about $2.5 million both on paid marketing ad campaigns, but also outreach, efforts to make parents aware and have knowledge about how it works, how to apply, what do I need. And thankfully, Texas, because Texas is a pretty good governed state, they actually made a pretty streamlined process on the government's end where the, comptroller of public accounts operates the program, really clean application process, easy to do. I did it for my own kids just to test. They're in pre-K, so not eligible, but it's really smooth operation. Otherwise, the policy, if you want to get into the mechanics and those kind of wonky details, parents' eyes might glaze over. They just want to know, am I eligible? How much funding could I receive?
Yeah.
And then where can I potentially send my kid? And so we try to make it simple for them when we get that inbound and that outreach.
So if somebody wants to learn about how they can gain the benefit of this, a great place to go would be to maybe go to the school that they might prefer to go to, a charter or a Catholic school or a private school of any sort, and say, hey, what access do I have to these?
Yep.
And they have a motivation to obviously get you through them.
Yep. No, exactly. That's a great kind of first step, because all of them too, many of them, they've been operating these programs for 10 years and they've been taking students on these scholarship programs for so long. If some parents going to a generic site that says, well, here's what a tax credit scholarship is.
Yeah.
End function is just your kid might be able to go to that school. And so school's a great, spot there. Our website, schoolchoicenow.org or Get School Choice, two websites that just can help you navigate some of this. And reach out to our team on social media and everything, because you may have a question and we may be able to help you navigate. Usually parents...
We'll put links to all that on our show.
And there's a lot of parent online groups that they're pretty well knowledgeable about navigating these issues. And there's other school chooser websites and apps that are out there. But at the end of the day, we've been trying to simplify these programs. So like in Texas or elsewhere, where we just say, look, everyone is eligible. So that before 10 plus years ago, Mark, there were programs where it's like, here are the like weird 15 like layers of eligibility you got to have. I joke like you had to be left-handed, blonde, and this, and it's just, crazy level of categories. Now that we've simplified that, saying, hey, if you live in the state, you are eligible. And there's like 7 states right now where every kid is eligible and can be fully funded. So you just raise your hand, you will get it if you want it. Other states have a budget cap, so only a limited pool of kids can get it. Therefore, it's usually prioritized by like low income, special needs, et cetera. But at the end of the day, we want to make it simple for families to navigate these programs. The schools are a really great resource for this. I think parents they should finally have optimism when it comes to K through 12. I mean, I've talked to so many families, probably because I live here in Texas and they know I run the American Federation for Children, but have just like, they've been in really tragic situations for years with their kids, oftentimes like special needs dynamics, which are just can be horrible, and haggling and lawyers involved with the school districts, you name it, that have finally gone like, oh my God, like there's been this school we've wanted to go to for so long, or I've been putting this kid in there and we're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make the ends meet on to go to that school because it's the only way my kid's going to get an education. I mean, I get emotional thinking about these stories because it's like, this is happening at industrial grade scale across our country. And we're finally with these laws starting to fix it. It's why they're so wildly oversubscribed when the first year of enrollment opens up. It's why the lawmakers are like, oh, we get this. This is a really potent issue. And so I'm hopeful that more and more, I hope every family will soon have school choice in their state and that they'll have the funding to get their kid in the best school possible, because this is a civilizationally important issue for the future of our country.
It is. And how old are you now?
37.
Wow. I think that is so interesting, because when I was 37 is when I cut the cord from working in big companies that I had, become successful in, but it just hit me that I was so full of vim and vigor that I just was like, I can't do this. I have to go out and do something on my own. I have to prove myself on a different playing field. I did all this risk related stuff, and it so happened to work out, which is great. I did great stuff, but there's also twists and turns that come your way. But I think a 37-year-old guy who is fired up, which you are, is formidable. And I think that when I speak to younger people, I think that finding that passion, sometimes it's not readily apparent. You have to dig, and then you find something that is a passion. And you obviously have done some digging, and in the course of it, you fired yourself up. I mean, what better thing to have as a mission, whatever it may be, if it's to help. Well, I'm really excited for you as a man who's 66 and it's refreshing to see a young guy who's just pumped. And,
no, thank you, Mark. Very kind words.
Well, no, they're just straight up. And I'm always telling the younger men who sell in our market, which is a pretty mundane product, but what you don't understand is the underlying details of it and the interaction with people to give them what they want and to provide a very, very technical product to them. There's a world of passion in that.
It's really fun to find the niche that you're passionate about. And, I used to be a competitive trap shooter.
I know.
Longer story, but back in the day.
Was that a 3-year All-American trap shooter?
Yes, back in the day. And it was something where, and I had my sights set on going to the Olympics potentially, and maybe foregoing college for a bit. And what I found, through that process is it's just an interesting kind of life guidance advice to exactly what you're talking about passions or what you're into. And it's, if you find something that you're good at, or maybe there's 2 skills that you're pretty good at, but you can combine into a superpower. Maybe it sounds like what you were able to do, where, you got this, you were the bag door, because you said, but then you had a good financial sense, good strategic sense. Suddenly you are an absolute weapon when it comes to, developing out a really world-class.
I played competitive lacrosse till I was probably 28. So
okay,
I
there
knew
you go.
There was no future there. That was just a guy who liked to run around and smash into things, and realize that would not, and just kind of converted that.
Yeah.
Well, and this is, I had to go through rehab and detox at 26.
Gotcha.
So I had at my mom's death, and have been sober now for 40 years. But so just sort of a whole shift of my perspective.
Sure.
Thank God. And I believe
thank God. Yes.
Somehow that was from above, not from
well,
above.
I mean, amazing story. And I think too, it's actually sometimes easier to make some of these sports analogies, but like someone telling us about the Olympic cycle of like, look, everybody competing in the Olympics wants the gold medal, right? Everybody wants to get there. It's always the number one little goal that they have on their whiteboard in their gym. The ones that actually get it, it's the ones that are obsessed, and in a good way, right? Where it's you are strategically obsessed with this idea and you're striving for that. And I think where I found success in this world and where I've just loved this work is like, I'm so passionate about this. I had no prior like professional education world experience, education reform, but I got obsessed about this after seeing that school and those kids that are just like, oh my God, they're about to just live potentially a horrible life because this school's that would have been the thing that saves them is about to go away. It just kept me up at night. And I felt that strategic obsession about being efficient with our results, maximizing the leverage of our impact could truly change America. And when you can really look at like and understand just the civics of our nation and how it operates and how you can change laws to meaningfully improve the trajectory of this country, I became obsessed with that idea. And it was sort of that obsession of like, maybe I learned a little bit of this back during my sports era. But at the end of the day, I felt, gosh, yeah, if you can combine a great team, we have just such an amazing team at our company across the 47 employees we have now. We're on track to deploy potentially nearly $50 million this year that could generate billions of dollars for, scholarship funding for kids. It's so exciting. It's so fun to be in this seat, to work with great people. They always say, pick your spouse and your coworkers pretty wisely, right? Because you're going to be with them for a long time. Yeah. And we have an amazing team. And it's so thrilling to work with them on this grand adventure.
And now, if I understand correctly, God willing, a new child will be brought into your life?
That's right. Hopefully in the next 72 hours or so, we have a baby girl on the way. We already have 2 boys. Wow. So we'll have 3 kids under 5. So yes, prayers up for my wife and I as we're about to have an even more fun adventure here.
Yeah, I have 5 of them, and I finally decided to come off the playing field at 43. I had my 5th at 43, and I remember I was in my office, and I did one of these things where it's like, just sit back and I'm going to just relax for a second. Unbeknownst to me, I fall sound asleep. I'm running a business, and the guy who is my CFO, he taps on the door very nicely, and I'm like, whoa, what? And he goes, Mark, everybody in the office can hear you snoring.
Amazing.
And I'm like, okay, I really can't have any more children. But I had 5 girls, and it's a miracle. That's all. Such
a blessing and miracle for sure. And
a little girl. You're going to have a little girl.
A little girl, the little princess with her 2 big brothers.
She will suck every drop of male out of you.
It's going to be, I can't wait. And look, we're the American Federation for Children. We're putting the children into the title there officially. We have like 3 or 4 other people on our team that are having kids this year. So it's so exciting and, thrilling. And like you said, such a blessing.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. And maybe, who knows, maybe we can catch up with you another year or 2 and hear what else you're doing.
That'd be really fun. I think especially once this tax credit launches next year, I'm hoping, maybe a 3-peat next year. We can talk about the thrilling launch of that and how we maybe have school choice funding flowing into Washington. That'd be a lot of fun.
That would be great fun. Well, let me say goodbye to Tommy Schultz, the CEO of the American Federation for Children, and go get him. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Mark. As always, have a good weekend.
See you later. Thank you for listening to The Mark Howley Show. If you found this story as intriguing as we did, give us a like, share the episode, and subscribe at The Mark Howley Show. New episodes every other Friday. Adios.